Hi, my name is Rio Wren, and I am the artist, designer, and owner of Raw Textiles. Welcome to my studio in Portland, Oregon. So this is the second of a series that I'm doing of demos that are just kind of like about processes and techniques using natural dye. So today we're going to take the samples and or yardage that I dyed and you dyed during the last video, which was creating an immersion bath with the Cotinus leaf, and we're going to combine that with iron. Today we're going to do ferrous sulfate salt crystals, and we're also going to I'm just going to kind of show you quickly how you can make your own ferrous acetate concoction to use in the same way with varying results, but with very easy household ingredients, so that you don't feel like you have to go and buy ferrous sulfate itself as a mineral salt. So this is the ferrous sulfate salts, and you can see it kind of has a green color to it. And this is what I'm going to be putting into this bath back here. Okay, now this is the ferrous sulfate bath. The water is basically warm, and I'm going to take about this much, which is maybe a teaspoon of ferrous sulfate crystal, and put it in there and just stir it up. And that should be enough. So what we have is some basic vinegar and some iron pieces like nails and bolts and stuff. And this is the ferrous acetate bath, which is the vinegar and the metal pieces. And the metal pieces are actually still in here, so they're actively working. And I put the metal in with the vinegar and a dash of water, and I would say leave it in for like 2 or 3 days before you start, and it should be good by then. And I just gently warm it like on low, and this has been probably around for like a month, so it will last you a really long time depending on how many times you dip in it. And like I said, I just leave the iron bits in it so that it can just be used whenever I need it, and it's always circulating. Okay, so let's get started. I folded these pieces of cotton in various ways, as you can see, and they are going to be bandanas, which I'm actually making right now for protection for airborne particles such as pollens and possibly COVID, and in general just our own breath, to keep it in and to keep it out. So one thing that you want to do is pre-soak your fabrics. And like for instance this one, especially when they're cottons, because they're kind of a little more water repellent. They don't just uptake right away, especially this poplin that I'm using. So you just want to pre-soak your fabrics a little bit. And then I have this fabric, which I'm going to just pre-soak it all, and then I'm going to reclamp it. So I'm just going to take this out and soak it. Okay, so I am going to dip this one in here, and I'm just going to leave it so that it can sit for a while and absorb. And then I'm going to also dip this one in it, in the halfway, and let it absorb. So this, I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And I'm going to put this one in here as well. and it is submerged. We're just going to wait for a couple minutes and watch transformation. So here are both baths side by side, and you can see how in this one the transformation is already occurring with the color. And so I'm going to turn it, and I'm also going to fish this one out because I think that it's good enough. Okay, and I'm going to put it in the water to rinse, and you can tell that it is quite a bit darker than it was when it went in. So that is lovely. And then let's check in on this. It too is transforming on the other end, and it kind of didn't really get in the middle because I don't have a way to get it all the way in there right now. However, I can take this little syringe and put syringe on the iron, and that is that. So I'm going to let this one just kind of sit for a minute because it will transform the color as it sits. And let's go back to look at this one and see what we got. You can see that there is a difference in color between this and that, and so that is a good thing. So that means that that's transferred color. Now, the one thing that I always tell people is to rinse really well before you unclamp something, because if you don't, then it's going to just start bleeding into the resist area, and you don't want that. So we want to make sure that we rinse it real good, and I'm going to do that in a minute away from the camera because I just want to make sure that it's still rinsed before I undo it. But you can see the difference in color between these two just by this being the acetate and this being the sulfate. And then this is dark and gray, and I'm going to rinse that as well. So this piece that I did, it turned out really gray, and I'm going to leave it overnight as well. I think that there's going to be some variations in it that I want, but where the clips are touching, it's really rusty, and so I think it's going to leave an interesting contrast, and so I'm going to leave that as well overnight to see what happens. Okay, so individually speaking, we're going to just open these up and take a look at them. And you can see that the triangles are really strong and not as strong here. That's normal. And I could have done some syringing of the iron, but I chose not to because I kind of like the pattern to be random. I'm not looking for a tight triangular pattern. So this is what we've got with this so far, and I'm going to let it dry. And then the next one is the circle. This one I did a really interesting fold, and it's going to be a bandana. As you see, that is the actual bandana shape, and that looks pretty cool. Okay, and then this one is also a bandana that I folded in an opposite direction. Ooh, and that looks real nice. Okay, so this is the piece that I did into the, I think I put this in the ferrous sulfate, and then I clamped it, and I wanted to leave it overnight. So these are me taking it off. So this is the last piece, and you can see that the iron has, by sitting on there, the rust has gotten darker in those spots. And we're just gonna, oh, look at that. See, that's kind of cute. And we're gonna open this up here. These dark marks, this is from the clamp. It has rust all along this edge, and because I left it in overnight, it really bit and put those marks on there. Now, if I would have opened this yesterday, it would have definitely not had those marks on it. So it's really cool. I'm glad that I did leave it. It looks nice. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I hope that you had the opportunity to either learn something new or give yourself permission to start or continue a project. And I know that the last video, if you didn't have an opportunity to dye stuff from the Cotinus leaf during that time that it was giving the color, that you perhaps will still try to use the leaves. Even though you won't get that color, you'll still be coating the fabric with a tannin, and with that you're going to still be able to get very similar results with the contrast of the iron, meaning that you're going to get some grays, charcoals, and blacks. And so those are really dynamic contrasts, and there's a lot that you can do with that, and I would just totally encourage you to go ahead and do some of that stuff. And there's a lot of plants out there that have tannin in them, and I actually do teach a workshop which is specifically tannin and iron, which dives into like several different types of tannins and the different shades of grays that you get and ways that you can create contrast and pattern. And this was just a short little introduction to that, and being very specific that we were using Cotinus leaf. Bella says, "Good day. Until we meet again, may your dye experiments be beautiful, magical, and interesting. Many blessings."